Hey, my name is Logan and I'm a daily vlogger. It's been a while since I've told my story. It's been a while since I've shared who I am and where I've came from and shared all my struggles. And I've noticed that there's a lot more new viewers than I've had in a while. And I just wanted to drop a refresher video of what's happened to me in the past and what's led me to become the person I am today. On May 16th, 2015, I believe the date was. On May 15th, 2015, I was at a motocross race and I was racing and I had an accident where I wrecked and took the handlebars to the stomach and I fell off the four-wheeler. I got back on, I finished the race, and like an hour or two after that, I was having like stomach pains and I didn't know what it was. At first I thought it was just like my abs being sore because of just taking the bar to the stomach. I just thought it was like that soreness. And it went away. And then a little bit later, like half an hour later, it came back and it was worse. And I was just bawling in tears, and my brother rode me over to the medic trailer at the race, and they said I had to go to the hospital. And the last thing I wanted to do was go to the hospital. So I made the decision not to go. I was laying on the bed in our trailer just trying to get the pain to go away. I just was putting ice packets like on my stomach, and it was constant, and it was just getting worse and worse. And then it got to the point where I just felt like I had to go to the bathroom. So I remember I walked over into the bathroom and I couldn't go. And I just remember being curled up, laying in the bathroom on the ground. I couldn't reach the door to get out. I was screaming for my dad. And I couldn't reach the door. I was helpless. I was just laying on the floor in the bathroom, literally dying. And I finally just reached up enough, grabbed the door, opened it, and as I was crawling out in the hallway, that's when my dad came in and he saw me laying on the ground, and right that second is when we made the decision to go to the hospital. And I remember I put my shoes on and I wanted ice, and we got a truck to use. We didn't have ice, so my brother found frozen sausage boxes in the freezer and he gave them to me, and I hopped in the back seat of the truck and laid across it, and I shoved the sausage in my waistband up against my stomach, and I just laid there for 20 minutes as we drove to the hospital. Then we got to the hospital, and I remember I slowly crawled out, and at this point I didn't have my shirt on. I slowly put my shirt on because we didn't think they'd admit me if I didn't have a shirt. I slowly put my shoes on. I walked into the hospital slowly, just holding my stomach, and we went straight in. I got my own room. And I remember actually my first nurse was getting a needle ready to get a blood sample, and he actually stabbed his finger. So he had to go, and we got a new nurse. And they gave me warm blankets, and at this point the pain subsided, and I was just kind of relaxing and scared, and I didn't know what was going to happen. But I remember it like it was yesterday. The first thing they did was they did a CT scan on me. And I remember this was the first time I've ever had this done. And she said, it's going to feel like you're peeing and you're going to get really warm. And that's exactly how it feels. If you've ever had a CT scan, you know it literally feels like you're peeing and you get really warm, which I was actually really happy about because I was just cold. I was in a hospital and I was just laying there in shorts and a t-shirt. And after that, they didn't say anything. All I remember seeing was heads of people who I didn't know, and my dad's voice, and the hospital tile on the ceiling as they pushed me straight into the ER. And I hung out there for a couple minutes, and I saw some friends who I know, and I said hi to them, and then I said goodbye to my dad. I told him I loved him. And I remember looking at the doctor, and at this point they cut my shirt off, which I was actually kind of salty about because I went through all that work to put it on. But I looked at the doctor and he said, count to 10. And I don't think I made it to 5. I woke up 9 days later after they put me in an induced coma. I went through 5 surgeries where they went in, cut a dead part of my intestine out, removed that, and put those 2 ends together. They did a intestinal resection, and they told me I had Crohn's disease. I'm going to get into some stories that I've never shared on camera. I've only shared with a select people just because they're kind of complicated to say, but I just think they're hilarious. So when I was in this 9-day coma, the drugs they had me on to keep me in this coma were so severe that I was having very realistic dreams, and I remember them as they were real. I'm just going to share one simple one because I think it's hilarious. Actually, I'm going to share a couple. So the first dream I had was I was actually in a car, in my mom's old car, and I woke up in the passenger rear seat, and I was sleeping with my head up against the window. And I remember I woke up and I looked over, and there was a hospital right there. And I got out of the car and I walked into the hospital, and there was a couple doors on the left, and there was couches with people waiting. And then on the right, there was a desk with like hospital people admitting you in. And right before that was a bed with my mom waiting at it. I walked in and I got right in the bed. Just in the middle of the lobby, I just climbed into this bed. And then from there is actually where they pushed me across into one of the doors on the left side. And I went into a bedroom, which actually was my hospital room. And at this point, my like real life memories and my dreams merged together. And I remember my mom, I remember my dad being there. I remember going to the bathroom for the first time, only it's all in this like imagination, that it's all like within my imagination that I created. And I remember I wanted ice. So I kept on asking people for ice. But in my mind, in my imagination, the door I came into the lobby of the hospital was the right door from where I was laying in bed. There was a door on the other side, and that door led out to like a little patio, and I could see people walking outside. And when I asked for ice, they kept on going outside, and I had no clue why they were going outside to get ice. And it wasn't until a couple days later that I actually realized that the door on my left side actually went to the lobby, and the door on my right side was the bathroom. So in my imagination, I came in through the bathroom. And another thing that I dreamed about was, I had one really strange dream that I literally can't explain, where I was in like the basement area. But I remember in the basement there was like this like laundry. There was like a dryer in there, like to dry your clothing. And I remember like watching the clothing dry, and like the lint, instead of dropping and going into the little like lint catcher, it'd fly up. And in my room there was like a tube on the wall. And I remember this old lady came in, she was wearing all black, and she opened up the tube and took out all the lint and like put it in a basket and then left. And like every single day I have a memory of this lady coming in and cleaning the lint out from the dryer. And one more dream, or this is a hallucination, one more hallucination that I had that I only remember partially, but my dad and everyone just thought it's hilarious, so I still remember it. But I was in my bedroom just dying laughing as hard as I possibly can, and I was just staring at the corner, and nobody knew why I was laughing. So my dad walked over to me and was like, "Logan, why are you laughing?" And I was like, "The chickens. Look at the chickens. Like, the chickens are doing backflips." I literally saw chickens in the corner of my room doing just backflips, just over and over again. So they're the funnier hallucinations and the things that my imagination created when I was on this drug. I never shared them with YouTube or actually many people before. After I was coming out of my coma and off these drugs, my recovery time was supposed to be pretty quick. They moved me to a separate hospital room, got out of the PICU, and at this point, it was supposed to be my last couple of days, and then I'd get sent home. And then I got a stomach infection. So I went from 120 pounds, I think I was, down to like 80, 90 pounds. I lost 30 pounds from the stomach infection, and the hospital I was at didn't know what to do. It was beyond their knowledge, and they did an amazing job. My surgeon did an amazing job, and they literally saved my life. But at this point, no one knew what to do. We were stuck in this hospital, and every single day they came back with blood tests, and one day they'd be a little better, and one day they'd be worse, and it was just a constant battle. And my insurance wouldn't let me leave, and they didn't want to pay for an ambulance, and I was just stuck in this hospital. They didn't know what to do, and it was just seemed like it was never ending. So I spent 9 days in a coma, probably about 2 weeks in the PICU, and then I spent a month in a different hospital room, just hoping the results would get better. I spent a total of 6 weeks in this hospital just waiting for my body to be ready. And my parents were ready to take me out of there regardless of what the doctor said. And then we actually got a nurse who was like really helpful to work with our insurance agency to let me leave and transfer to Hershey Medical. At the time, I was at West Virginia University Hospital. It was like 3.5 hours away from us, and Hershey's like 45 minutes, and it's just a much better hospital with very prestigious doctors, and that's where I get treated now. This nurse convinced the insurance to let my family take me out and then drive me to Pennsylvania and readmit me into Hershey. So I finally was able to leave, and I went to Hershey Medical Center. They admitted me into the children's hospital. I got this awesome room, and I had my huge TV. The entire bathroom was a shower. I had a nice comfy bed. My mom had a bed to sleep on. It was actually like luxurious. They had McDonald's every day. They had a dog that came around to cheer you up. Like I was getting happy. And then I had a doctor that was really funny, and I think his last name was like Dr. Funny or something like that. It was just awesome, and it just made me happier. And then on the first day, or the second day, I think it was, they came in and said, "Logan, how would it make you feel if we told you can go home?" I got so happy. I think I was in that hospital for a total of like 2 days or 3 days. And then they sent me home. And it was obviously a long process from there to get better. I think it took me 6 months to get back on my feet. Took me so long to start putting weight back on, but I got home, I got better, and then I went to a Tony Robbins event like 6 months after I got out of hospital, and that event completely changed my life. I left there. That event is the reason why I go every year, and that's why I'm going again in March, and I just give as much time, as much money, regardless of what it takes for me, because I owe my life to that program, to Unleash the Power Within, to Tony Robbins. I left that. I went to the gym for 6 months straight. I was eating healthier than I ever was. I went from being almost dead to being a top national racer in my class. My life completely changed. And I was living. I was truly like enjoying life. And then after senior year of high school, I decided that I wanted to go to college. I wanted to go to college at Florida State University. So it was a big jump for me, moving from Pennsylvania to Florida. And my initial goal was to train year-round in Florida for motocross and go to school. And that was 100% my intentions. And I went there, and at this point, I had like a very different mindset from the norm because of all I'd been through from the adversity I faced. And I understood the value of like education, but I also understood that you didn't need education. So when I made the decision to go to college in Florida, I was going there with an open mind, hoping that like I would learn so much and experience so much and get way more than I was paying for to go to college. And to be honest, I was disappointed. I moved to Florida, I took on all these student loans, I changed my entire lifestyle. I did 1 semester of college, and I wasn't happy. Towards the end of it, I started to feel bad physically. I started to feel bad mentally, and I decided to drop out because it was not making me happy. It was not fun at all. I wasn't learning anything. And right after I dropped out, I got a stomach infection. The stomach infection was horrible. I laid in my bed for 2 months straight. I didn't have enough energy to cook my own food. Didn't have enough money to go to the grocery store. I didn't have enough energy to drive myself to the hospital, but yeah, I did it 2 times. And both of those times, they didn't find anything. They just thought I was having a flare-up, so they put me on a steroid and sent me home, and it helped a little bit, but as soon as the 2-week period of that steroid was up, it just got worse. So for 2 months straight, I couldn't eat, I couldn't digest, I couldn't do anything besides lay in my bed. And it was much worse than I thought. And seeing the pictures today freak me out. And then in March of last year, there was the first race for my brother, because at this point I was in no condition to race. I drove down to Orlando and met my brother. And then we drove to Daytona and met my dad, and it just really hit me. It hit them how bad I was. I couldn't even watch my own brother race that day. I had to sit in my bed in the trailer, and I was dying. I was so malnourished. I lost 40 pounds at this point. I was just withering away day by day, and I came home. I had no choice but to come home. When we were done in Florida, me and my dad drove straight through in my car. We met my mom at my dad's house, and my mom drove me straight back to Hershey Medical Center. The first night I was in the hospital, they actually had me in a bed in the hallway of the ER because it was so busy. And they came, did a couple blood tests. They were trying to figure out what to do with me. And they were talking about not admitting me. But at this point, I didn't want to go home. I just wanted help. And if they would have sent me home, we would have been lost. So they took me back into a different room to do, it was a blood transfusion, because I was so just malnourished and was so weak, and I was so low on so many vitamins, and I was so dehydrated, and they said, this is the only thing that'll make you feel good. And my blood literally wasn't fighting what I was going through anymore. I was just too weak to fight this. So they were giving me a blood transfusion in this room, and they were doing a couple more tests, and they said, we're going to admit you at least for the night. And then that night they did a stool sample, and that's when they found out about my stomach infection. It was scary. The next day, I had a surgeon come in and say that they have to remove all of my intestine, all of my colon, everything in my stomach. They'd have to take it all out and put an ostomy bag on the outside of me. And I've never cried so hard in my entire life. And it just blows my mind today that we asked to see the picture that they were making this judgment off of, and you can't even see anything on it. I just can't believe that they would jump to a conclusion that would change somebody's entire life off of a picture that I could have drew with a crayon. It wasn't a good... You couldn't tell what you were looking at. And she wanted to take my entire life away. Even the doctor said they weren't sure. They just thought. They were assuming. And I told my dad, I told my mom, I told my brother, I was like, they're not doing that to me. And the first thing I remember is my dad saying, okay, we won't let them. I love my parents. But after that, we after that, we asked for a new surgeon, and we got a new surgeon. And it was actually somebody who was recommended to us in the ER, and he's really cool. And for some reason, he's the only doctor I've ever seen who doesn't wear a doctor outfit. He just dresses in like a soccer uniform every day. And I love that about him. But he was really cool. And my actual surgeon, that was my doctor. My surgeon was like laid back, and he was old school, and he was like willing to wait. And we were just pushing this idea of trying to heal with medication to my doctor. And he's the one who, like, we really needed to change his opinion because he was the best opinion we could ever get. And he said, we'll give it a chance. We're going to try this different medication that you didn't have access to when you were under 18 years old. And he said, there's a 1 in 10% chance that this works. So there's a 90% chance that it's not going to work and you will need surgery. Like, those odds aren't good, but it was hope. So I got out of the hospital finally, and I was still insanely weak, but I was out. I had a backpack on that had IV nutrition in it, and it was running into my arm right here 20 hours a day. I got a 4-hour break. And if you watch my first couple of vlogs, I'm wearing that backpack in it. And I love the fact that I started before I was supposed to do anything. I started working when I had that backpack in. I wasn't supposed to lift anything, but I was working. I was creating. I was starting a new life before my last horrific life was over. So a couple things happened during recovery. One, at first, I struggled. I remember eating pizza and throwing it up right away. I remember getting a smoothie and throwing it up right away. I remember the one day I was getting lightheaded every time I stood up. And it's one thing they were really monitoring was my red blood count in my blood. Because if it got too low, that's when my body couldn't help heal itself. And that's when you literally can't fight any diseases. You can't fight infections. You can't heal if that's not at a good number. And a day or two after I got out of the hospital, it was down again. So then I had to go back to the hospital, and I just kept on thinking, like, don't readmit me. I just want to be home. I hadn't been home in 6-7 months at this point. I just want to be home. And eventually, they just gave me another blood transfusion. They gave me 2 bags. It took like 4 or 5 hours, and then we had to drive home. We didn't get home until like 1 or 2 in the morning, but they sent me home. And after that, I just slowly got better. I was trying different pills. I was trying to eat different foods. I was just being very careful of what I was putting in my body. And every Tuesday and Thursday, I had a nurse come. On Thursdays, they changed my dressing. They gave me new dressing. And on Tuesdays, it was just like blood work and checking how much weight I put on. And I actually missed the nurses because they were really nice, and they all loved me just because of me. They loved me because of my story. They loved me because they saw hope in me, because I challenged doctors, because I was going against what normal people would have done. And they saw something in that. And soon enough, within 2 months, I was putting on weight faster than they have ever seen somebody put on weight before. And every time they come, in 2 days, I'd put on 5, 6, 7 pounds. And they were like, oh my, like, Logan. I remember having a new doctor and be like, hey, Logan, it's great to meet you. It's great to meet you. I've heard so much about you. Just because, like, the nurses, when they left my house, they were so excited that they went and told their coworkers. I just love that. And then I was getting ready to go back to my first race to watch. And I had a doctor's appointment the day before we left. And I remember walking in with a t-shirt. It was one of the t-shirts I made, and it said Fearless on it. And one of the doctors who knew who I was, one of the nurses who knew who I was she read it, and she's like, I like that shirt. And then I walked in, and I remember when my surgeon came in, the very first thing he said was, if we keep this bag on you for any longer, we're going to have to see you back for weight loss. And it was hilarious because, like, all that time just being so malnourished and so weak and so skinny, and just to hear him say that and just joke about me, just joke about my progress, joke about how well I'm doing, it made me so happy. And then he's like, why don't we leave this on you until you're out of supplies, and then we can remove the bag and take the IV out of you. And I was like, well, I'm leaving for a race tomorrow, and I'm going to run out of supplies while I'm gone, and then I'm just going to have to wear this PICC line in me this whole time for no reason. And he's like, let's just remove it tonight. So I remember that night I went home, nurse came over, they took the PICC line out of me, took all the supplies, and I was free. A week or two later, I remember I tried to go on my first run, and I ran a quarter of a mile at like a 13-mile pace, and my heart rate was at like 180 or like 190. It was ridiculous, and I literally felt like I was dying. But I was so happy just because I was out. I was trying to run again, and running was something I really missed. And it's just been a fun, amazing recovery process since then. Now I work out as much as I can. I run as much as I can when I'm not traveling. And I'm having fun. I'm doing what I love to do. I'm so grateful. Thank you, guys. I know I've said my story before. I know I've gotten deep on my videos before, and everybody appreciates it. Those who watch the whole thing. And in the podcast I made sharing my story, I really got deep, and I shared some of this stuff I put in here. But the podcast is always deeper than the videos. So this video is now the deepest I've ever gotten about my story. And I've shared stuff in here I've never shared anywhere else. Thank you, guys. If you've listened this far, I truly appreciate you, because this is my story. Just 100% me. I told you I can make myself cry.